Welcome to another edition of the Dakotans Election Central, where we're covering the 2024 North Dakota election cycle. Today, I am joined by District 30 Senate incumbent candidate, Diane Larson. Thank you for joining us today, Diane.
Thank you. It's nice to be with you, the star of the show.
There we go. So, you have quite an awesome, fantastic history in the House and Senate in North Dakota. You first joined in 1989 through 90, and then you joined again in 2013 through 16 in the House. And then in 2017, you switched over to the Senate. What sparked your interest initially to get into politics?
Initially, I got talked into it.
Oh, that's
Um,
how it goes,
like 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 a lot of people, I I I have been a Republican my whole life.
right?
And I mean, when I was in college, I joined the college Republicans, and so I think it's a reputable thing. I think it's something that's important, and so I started working on some other people's campaigns to
Okay.
help them and familiarize myself more with what it really takes to be a legislator. Although I was not ever thinking of doing that myself, I just felt it was important.
Right.
Brent Winkleman at the time was a House member, and he asked me to be his running mate, and I actually said, "No, I can't.
Can't
I,
do it.
I'm terrified of public speaking,
Right.
and I just can't possibly do this." But thanks for the asking. He said, "No, I really want you to do this. I think that you'd be a good candidate, and I want you to pray about it."
Wow.
So I prayed about it, and I decided, all right, I will try. And that's how I got started. And along the way, I've had a lot of really good help from a lot of really good people. That year, I was the only Republican elected out of our district, which at that
Wow.
time was District 52.
Okay. That
And,
shows a little bit of the history of it right there. So we know you as Senator Larson, and you've been part of the Workforce Development Committee recently. You're the chair of the Judiciary Committee since 2019, and you've been involved in a lot of other things. But stepping away from politics for a moment, who,
mhm.
who is Diane Larson?
Well, I've lived in Bismarck almost my whole life. Um, I'm a mom. I'm a wife first, and a mom and a grandmother. And I went to Bismarck Junior College before it was Bismarck State College, and then I graduated with a teaching degree from UND.
Okay.
And right out of college, we moved to Albuquerque for just 4 years and then back. And I wasn't able to use my teaching degree there because I didn't speak Spanish.
Oh, could
And
imagine.
so when I came back here, I didn't teach. Um, and then I was a stay-at-home mom for 10 years.
It's fantastic.
And yeah, I loved it. I loved it. Was a real blessing to be able to do that. And then after that, I ran for the legislature, and I served one term, and I did not want to run for reelection because it took so much of my time away from my kids,
Right.
and they they were very lonely without me
Mhm.
being home all the time. And so what I did after that, I didn't run for reelection. I did talk to other people to encourage them to be involved, like we're going to have to be doing soon with all these, with so much term limits. We're going to have to be really looking for qualified people to fill those slots as we move forward.
Absolutely.
And I'm a little concerned about that as an aside.
Right.
Getting enough people to agree to do it. It's a sacrifice.
Yeah. I, I
Um,
I
Go
think
ahead.
that's an interesting point, and I know that I'm interrupting you a little bit, but
That's all right.
if you wouldn't mind, because the term limits is something that came into place recently, and
Yes.
it's going to start. We're going to start feeling the effects. And
Right.
what's unique about it, because of how it's done, is we have a lot of experience in our legislature, and
Right.
we're going to go and just see rapid turnover, where
Yes.
the whole districts are replacing all three candidates at a time,
Yes.
things like that. Do
Right.
you see a problem from the inexperience coming in, or is that just something that is going to be worked out and they're going to be able to jump in and it's not going to be a problem?
I see it as a problem.
Yeah.
I see it as a problem. I know that when I came into the legislature as um, a younger person starting, it was overwhelming. There's so much to know and understand, even about the ins and outs of how a bill even becomes a law.
Right.
Much less how do you really evaluate whether it's going to be a good law that you're going to propose or not? And then who do you get to come in and talk to people about the importance of the law? And it's just going to, I have real concerns about that. I do. And we're going to have to do a much better job um, while we're there to do as much mentoring as we can. I have already told some people that have shown a little bit of interest to me. Um, I've said, come and sit in with me for a whole day.
Right.
Sit in with me during our committee hearings and then on the floor, and let me explain so many of the ins and outs to you so that at least there's some familiarity with what we're doing.
Absolutely. We were interviewing Dr. Rick Becker, of course, about
Oh,
his Congress run. And one of the things he mentioned was we asked him, "What's some of the first things you're going to do when you get into office?" And a lot of times people get excited about that and like, "Well, we're
yeah,
going to change this, that, and the other." He's like, "I'm going to go learn the process of how it works there, so we can actually be effective." And it
right.
doesn't matter whether you're pro Dr. Becker or against him or pro another
Right.
candidate. That right there is
It's an
something that
issue.
is looked over of, well, I'm going to go to Bismarck and change things. Well, first you need to go and look to experienced people and make sure that you understand how it works so you can have effective change.
Yes, I think that that's going to be an important thing as we move forward.
So, um, what was I interrupted your life story.
Okay,
And I
let me
want
just go back briefly then.
let's do it.
Then
Yeah, let's
after
get back.
that, I got a job at the Police Youth Bureau to write and educate kids on uh, DUI, on drug and alcohol legislation, and those kinds of things. And so I wrote the program that kids would have to take if they got cited with a DUI. And
Okay.
from that, it moved into a full-time youth worker position. And so I worked for 23 years at the Police Youth Bureau, helping juveniles who got into trouble to learn the right things and so they didn't reoffend.
That's neat. That's incredible. So always been a little bit about advocacy and helping people, trying to make a difference.
Thank you. Thank you for saying it that way.
Yes. So, in 2012, you go and you make a run, you get elected to the House, and you've been there or in North Dakota Congress ever since. What are some of the accomplishments that you look back on that were like, I'm thankful that I was a part of helping get this passed into law or whatever else it may have been?
Well, I think that part of that is, you know, we try to figure out who we are.
Hmm.
What 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 do I stand for? And those are the kinds of things that I've advocated for. I am absolutely pro law enforcement.
Right.
And I have done what I can to help law enforcement. Last session, I sponsored a bill um, for law enforcement that their retirement income would not be taxed for North Dakota income tax. We did that for the military in 2019. And that was something that the head of the Chiefs of Police Association came to me and he said, I think that if we did this for police, it would help us with recruitment and retention because police departments all across the state are short of personnel. And he said he thought that this might help. And we did get that passed. Looking into the next session, I missed something in that. And that is that when you get, if you've got 20 years of law enforcement in,
Okay.
and so that you qualify for this, your retirement income won't be taxed. If you die, most of the time, those agencies that you work for give a portion of that retirement income to your surviving spouse. I neglected to have that portion also tax exempt for the surviving spouse.
Gotcha.
So I hope to get that fixed in this next session.
Yeah.
But otherwise, things that just try to keep the community safer. I felt that drug court was a good program. I
Right.
sat in on some of those, and so I helped to get some of that passed. Those kinds of law enforcement things, but also I've got a 100% record with the Family Alliance.
Wow.
Those family values of pro-life, um, anti-gambling, all of those kinds of things are things that are important to me. And so the things that I have worked on are those types of things over the years. And I think that for the most part, it's been pretty successful. I haven't myself sponsored a lot of bills,
Right.
but I've worked to get some other ones, help to get them passed.
In your district, and we'll just
Yes.
touch on this briefly, in your district, there's been a little bit of controversy that's risen up.
Yeah.
It was reported on by the North Dakota Monitor, and basically at the convention, at the endorsing convention, I believe, were not present,
Correct.
um, but you guys are running in the primary for sure, or you are running in the primary for sure.
Yes.
I think simply my question is this, is we understand that, as probably has been said a lot over the last, like, 2 or 3 years, families fight. It's natural. It's growth. Iron sharpens iron. North Dakota politics is a very unique beast because of how red it has become over the last 10 years or so, 8 to 10 years.
Right.
Is there any worries that constituents in your district should have about anything? Or is this just natural part of modern day politics where it's become a little bit different battlefield?
I thank you. You know, you're a very good interviewer, Jonathan. Well done with your questions, framing it in a way that isn't controversial, isn't confrontive. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Um, in our district, we had 4 years ago a very determined group of younger people that came over with the intention of um, taking over the district and having it be the way they pictured it should be. Like what you were saying earlier about people going to DC and saying, I'm going to change all of this. I
Yeah,
think that that was some of the exuberance that came in.
right.
Um, and so um, I have always been an advocate of um, being polite,
Mhm.
trying to have civil discourse. And what frankly happened in this last situation was that we tried very hard to get a meeting scheduled so that we could schedule an endorsing convention.
Right.
We had a lot of problems with that,
Mm.
back and forth, to the point where we really didn't know when we were going to have it. So we decided we were going to just go door to door and get the nomination by petition. And
Right.
then it wouldn't be an issue. We would get on the ballot in June. And then when the announcement did come out about when the convention, the endorsing convention was going to be for our district, the announcement included just those other three candidates. And
Oh,
so I just felt like I don't know that this is a smart thing for me to go
right.
and have all the controversy and arguments that might come up. It might be more peaceful to just say, let's go to the primary, let's let the voters decide, and let them have a more peaceful endorsing process.
Absolutely.
Some people took offense to that, and so they censured us. Other people voted against that.
Right.
But I had, in a way, I wish I had gone just to sit in the back of the room and be able to answer questions. But on the other hand, I didn't want it to turn into a fight, so I just left it. We just left it alone.
And going door to door creates a unique opportunity because
Yes,
something that we've asked some is, has there been a disconnect that has formed across the years between uh, our our legislatures when they're in Bismarck and the people? And this brings it back to the people where you're able to go and actually get someone to petition for you or sign that
Yes.
paper for you that actually cares about what you're voting for. So was
It
that a
was
unique
really
opportunity?
affirming. It
Yeah.
was really affirming. Talking to the people, I was surprised at how many people knew me
Okay.
and said, "I've voted for you before, and I'm definitely going to vote for you again."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was nice to hear
Right.
that I have done a good job for our district.
Absolutely. Very neat. So looking forward to the next legislative session, if you get elected, what are some of the goals that you're looking forward to being part of in the future?
Well, one of those things is to continue with civil discourse. Um, as chair of Judiciary Committee, my first day, I told everybody on my committee, we will treat everybody that comes to our podium with respect. They address us as senator,
Hmm.
we will address them by their title, even if we know who they are, rather than first name. And I felt like that was an important thing to just show respect to one another. And I then expected that to happen, and from people that were at the podium to treat my committee members with respect as well. Even if we didn't agree with what they were saying, we're going to be
Right.
respectful. And so that's something that in all of my dealings in the session, that's one of the things that I want to continue. Another
Absolutely.
thing is I already do have a couple of bills drafted.
Okay.
One is on the silver alert. This last um, this past winter, there was a gentleman from Bismarck who went missing, and the family was not able to get a silver alert message sent out for
Wow.
him because he didn't have a diagnosis of dementia.
Wow.
And although he was certainly at risk, that was the rules that they had to abide by in order to whether or not to send that out and interfere with everybody's telephones
Right.
messages. So I do have a bill drafted to alleviate that. And a family, if they can swear out that my family member is definitely at risk, that they can get the silver alert sent out for an elderly person that's missing.
That's neat. Continuing to fight for community things. I like that. I appreciate that. Not
Thank
trying to
you.
go and create uh, political drama at the state level, just going
No.
on things that we encounter on the daily basis in our lives that sometimes are difficult.
Another thing that's important, I think, in this next session to address is public safety.
Yes.
I've been talking with our city police chief, our sheriff, and our state law enforcement at the BCI. And we have a higher felony recidivism rate than we have ever had. There are people being let back out on the streets that are dangerous felons. And I am working with another legislator that I think is I mentioned his name to you before we started, Jonathan Sickler from Grand Forks, a brilliant attorney that was one of my vice chairs on my committee. And I contacted him and I said, this is an issue we need to really address. And so he's working with me. I've talked with judges. He's We're going to be looking at the whole system. It's not as simple. Judge Hagerty told me it's not as simple as reinstituting mandatory minimum sentences. That
Okay.
was actually turned out to be sort of ineffective
Interesting.
because state's attorneys then just brought in something different to charge with, and there's workarounds apparently. So
Okay.
um, it comes all the way from the report to the state's attorney, to the judge, to the sentencing, to the penitentiary, to the release, to the parole, whether it's being supervised as it should be. And it's a real systems problem that I don't have legislation drafted for that at this point. We're
Right.
really working on it over this interim to try to bring something that will be effective into the next session.
And obviously you're working on it, and so there might not be as much that you want to discuss on at this point, but how do you fix that problem? Because it's something that we've heard brought up before of We go and we have them pay
Well,
the time, but after that.
one thing that I had heard
Mhm.
from from a judge is that sometimes a state's attorney is really good and they bring you all kinds of information about the um, person that's going to be charged. Other times it's very limited. And
Gotcha.
so, one thing maybe I'm thinking at this point, it's not fully vetted yet, but
Yep, understood.
at this point, I'm kind of thinking we need to do something to spell out what a state's attorney needs to bring to the judge so that the judge can make a fairer decision, based on recidivism, based on whether they've offended before, whether they were sent to a diversion program before, and if they succeeded at that or not, so that when they do sentence the individual, they have a better record to go by on, well, what's worked in the past? What have we tried in the past? And if that's been ineffective, let's not just keep doing the same thing.
Right. Very good. Very good. Let's talk North Dakota politics as a whole for a moment.
Okay.
We won't spend a lot of time on this either, but it seems like the Republican Party specifically has undergone a lot of change in the past 6 to 8 months. We've seen a change in the chair from Perry Schaefer to Sandy Sanford.
Yes.
And then more recently, you see the mix up with Governor Brigham stating he will not be running for that third term, Kelly
Right.
Armstrong running for that position. And now there's the challenger, the Lieutenant Governor Tammy Miller is also running for that. And then you have the House seat that Armstrong vacates, where there are three candidates going after that on the Republican side. So it's turning into a very interesting political cycle here for North Dakota, which has typically been pretty stable, at least for the last 10 years, of somebody steps down, somebody gets replaced. It's
Right.
been pretty smooth. Is this something that a Republicans should be concerned that a Democrat is going to be able to, in the midst of all this, steal one of those seats back from a Republican's point of view, still that seat back? And B, is there a concern that there's just two factions of the party going at each other too hard right now, kind of dismantling some things that have been built up over the years?
Well, I think that at the national level, we're a little bit more immune to the slings and arrows that are
Yeah,
thrown at each other.
right.
And in North Dakota, we really have been a lot more nice about things.
That's good.
And as some of the things over the past, if you say 6 months, um, people are, and I don't know if it's because of social media or because of that national influence or what,
Right.
I have seen people be a lot more rude towards one another, and name calling and blaming of things that are not exactly accurate just to try to win their point. That part is disappointing me. And I think that in talking to voters, I think that a lot of people are just getting tired with the whole thing
Yeah.
and they just don't want to endure it anymore. And they just say, you know what, you guys go fight your fights and just leave me out of it. I'll just try to live my life. And I
Absolutely.
and I and I and that is one of the bad things about that. One of the bad things about that, because we need people to be engaged and giving us information so that we can make better decisions based on more information from more people in our districts and in our state. And so I just hope that things don't get bad enough that people lose patience with the whole thing and just want to just, and I think that that's really part of the reason that the term limits even passed is people just said, you know what, get rid of whatever they're doing and let's start over. That hasn't helped.
Right.
People are getting angrier trying to get those new slots,
Yeah.
and it's a shame.
When term limits passed, it was interesting because you saw it pass in essentially a landslide. It was a very high percentage that passed by, but you
Right.
also saw Hoeven get elected by almost a similar margin. You're like,
Yes.
well, you're voting for a guy that's been in office for a long time, but also you're wanting to put a cap on that. That's an interesting perspective.
But it's not, it was for the state legislature, not Congress.
Right. Yeah. The term
So,
limits wouldn't affect Hovind,
right.
but it's
But you're
still,
right. Yes.
it's interesting how that works out. I wasn't planning on asking this question, but I
Okay.
think it's interesting based off your comments just now. With all the fighting that goes on, the name calling, all that stuff that we talk about, um, what just going back to the core, with the modern politics has kind of convoluted it a little bit. What is the role of a legislature? What is getting past the name calling, the politicking,
Right.
the all that stuff that goes on? How
Look
do
at
you?
look at what's happening, and when you notice that something isn't working right, then try to fix it. Like, for
Mhm.
example, the silver alert.
Yeah,
That was a good thing. It wasn't working right in this situation, so let's fix that.
right.
And I think that that's the biggest role of the legislature is not to upset the apple cart, but to just kind of look at things and say, all right, if this is working, let's leave it alone. If there's something that's getting in the way of this working, then let's see what we can do to logically fix it.
Absolutely. That's very good. So, coming to a close, if someone wants to support you in your current run, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Um, Talk to everybody you know in District 30 and ask them to get out to the primary election, because people are traditionally not very good at going to vote in the primary, and this one's going to be important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um,
And if they have a question that they want to ask you, how can they find you?
I have my cell phone number published. It's
Yep.
400-7218.
Great.
My email address is dlarson at, not my campaign, my personal one is diane.larson30@gmail.com.
There you go.
But
Sounds good.
otherwise, if it's something legislative, my legislative email address is dlarson at ndlegis.gov.
Perfect. Sounds good. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today and just chatting with us.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. To our viewers, thank you for watching this episode of the Dakotans Election Central. Uh, if you want to view more videos like this, you can go to mydakotan.com, click on Election Central, and there will be a database of just all the candidates and a bunch of more news articles and videos that you can take a look at. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, become part of the Dakota community. Thank you for watching this video, and have a great day.